Hello, everyone, and welcome to another MTE recap here on the Sports Daily Media Network YouTube channel. Tonight, we're recapping the Baha Mar Hoops Championship in Nassau in the Bahamas. I'm your host, Sean Vowells, and as usual, I'm joined by Mike Koomar. And how about this one, Mike? What a great four-team event that took place down there in the Caribbean. Tennessee ends up winning it all. But first, we got to talk about that first semifinal game between your Baylor Bears and St. John's. A crazy back-and-forth affair. St. John's led by, 25?
19. They led
19?
by, yeah.
Baylor comes all the way back, forces it to overtime. It looks like St. John's is going to win it in double overtime if they just make a couple free throws. Two clanked balls off the rim. Jeremy Roach gets it, puts up a three. Nothing but net, and Baylor wins this one 99-98. How about this one, Mike? What a win for your Baylor Bears.
One of the craziest games that I've seen in a long time, Sean. This game really seemed like coming down the stretch, both teams wanted to give it to the other. First off, for St. John's surrendering a 19-point lead that they had at one point in the first half and letting Baylor claw all the way back. And really, in prime position, Baylor should have won this game in regulation. Yep. Jeremy Roach knocks down two shots in a one-for-one situation. And Baylor is a 4-point lead with a matter of seconds to go. He doesn't do that. St. John's drives down the court, gets a two-pointer to send it into overtime. And then once again, Baylor has a 5-point lead in regular overtime with about a minute to go. Baylor surrenders that 5-point lead. And then we go to double overtime, which was dominated by St. John's. Baylor, I think, was 3 of 7 from free throws in the second overtime. And then, of course, down by 5 with 10 seconds to go, 2 crazy three-pointers go in, and Baylor wins. It was a shocking game, to say the least. I know Pitino and St. John's must have felt sick after this game. I know he had some criticisms afterwards for icing his free throw shooter. Look, dude, you got 2 free throws to win the game. Let's not get into this icing nonsense. Like, Pitino's better than that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. He's said crazier things.
He has. That's true. But at this point, like, St. John's, you got to be able to close out that game. That one's really going to hurt. I don't think St. John's is going to have trouble getting into the tournament this year. But this is one of those games where when they're thinking between they're going to get an 8 or a 9 seed or a 6 and a 7, this is the one that's going to bump them to the 7 because the committee doesn't look at how the game was lost. They just look at the game was lost at that point at these early games. So really tough one for St. John's, but they took it out in the second game.
Yeah, this was just a really weird game all around. Both teams shot the 3 incredibly well. Baylor was 51% and St. John's was 58% from 3. So much for the ballroom three-point shot theory. But, Mike, that did come into play on the free throw line. Baylor just 14 of 23 and St. John's 16 of 28. So I guess you could say that evens out. I mean, you're probably more disappointed on leaving the shots at the line. Zuby Ejiofor missed 6 free throws. In this game, he was 6 for 12. You make 1 free throw, Pitino probably fouls, and St. John's probably wins that game in 2 overtimes. So St. John's will be kicking themselves. But, Mike, had St. John's won it there, I think Baylor would have been kicking themselves because both teams played pretty well over the course of the 40 minutes. And both teams got really good performances from their stars. I think we're starting to see a pretty solid rotation from both teams, really. And then both teams made shots, and only one team could come out on top. But anything to add on this one before we move on to the other game?
I would have been.
Did I lose you? All right, Mike, anything to add on this one before we move to the other game?
Yeah, I mean, if for me being a Baylor fan, if we had lost that game, I would have felt sick. It was really a game that Baylor gave away at the free throw line in regulation, overtime, and potentially double overtime. So relieved that two crazy 3-pointers that were off balance went in, but it is what it is, and the Bears got the win, and I'm grateful for it. So good to get that one for Baylor.
All right, up next in the other semifinals, the Virginia Cavaliers and the Tennessee Volunteers. This one was close early with Tennessee leading by just 1 at halftime, but the Volunteers put up double the amount of points in the second half and end up winning this game easily by 22 points. Chaz Lanier, 10 for 23 from the field with 26 points. Mike, I think this game went the way both of us thought. Virginia hung early, and then Tennessee pulled away with the big talent disparity. But Tennessee moves on to the final in pretty easy fashion.
Yeah, it looked like this game could have been close early on. 1-point game going into halftime. You felt pretty good about the Cavaliers, but the offense just, did not work. They were very inefficient for UVA in this game. Tennessee, however, they rebounded after a really bad offensive first half and just completely took over this game. You could tell that they are a far more talented team, and they dominated a not very good UVA team.
All right, well, up in the championship game, we had Tennessee and Baylor. But first, in the third-place game, St. John's cruised to an easy win. It would be the only win that they would leave the Bahamas with. They did play Georgia in another game after this, which they lost, and they were upset. But, Mike, St. John's has to be kicking themselves that they're leaving Bahamas with just one win.
Yeah, very disappointing that they couldn't follow that game up with a win against Georgia and laid an egg in that one. So not very good. I think we would have expected them to at least go 2-1. You don't expect them to beat Baylor, but you expected them to win that third game. I think at the end of the day, it really just came down to being exhausted, right? They played 2 overtimes, were completely drained against Baylor. They coasted to a pretty easy win against UVA, but 2 games in 2 days is a lot this early in the season, and then you got to go play a third against a well-rested Georgia team. Not good for St. John's, and I think they're a little bit of a victim of their own environment.
All right, Mike, up in the championship game, it was Tennessee against your Baylor Bears. The Volunteers came firing out of the blocks, up 47-20 at halftime. Baylor did outscore Tennessee by 12 to make this margin a little bit more respectable, but Chaz Lanier, 25 points here. Jordan Gainey had 16. And the score doesn't really indicate how one-sided this one was. Tennessee rolls to an easy victory.
Yeah, I mean, Baylor garbage time buckets to make this appear to be closer. They only lost by 15, but I mean, don't get it started. This game was over at the 10-minute mark. Baylor was down 17 with 10 minutes to go in the first half. So, really not a good look. Look, Tennessee has a lot of good shooters. That does not excuse the bad defensive play we've seen from Baylor. And this isn't the first time we've seen it this season, and it's been a pattern since they won the national championship in 2021, where Scott Drew's teams have not played good defense. So, as a Baylor fan, I'm leaving the Bahamas very concerned about my team because we've now had 2 terrible defensive performances against really good teams. And it's one of those things. Baylor is one of those teams historically where it's been you live or die by the 3. They won the first game because they made threes. They were not as efficient from 3-point range in this game, and that's why they lost, only scoring 62 points. If they can't run a track meet, they're going to lose.
And I think, Mike, you might look at the 77 points and think, oh, well, that's not too bad. But Tennessee was chewing clock. They could have scored more if they wanted to, which, again, points to your alarming fact.
Yeah, no, very concerning for Baylor. Even if they had shot much better from 3 and they made 3 or 4 more threes, I mean, you look on the scoreboard and say it would be a lot tighter. It would not happen. Tennessee probably still would have won by as many points if Baylor had made 4 more 3-pointers in this game.
Yeah, and that's something Baylor's going to have to figure out. Mike, it does not get any easier. Baylor's next big game is on the road at the Gamble Pavilion in Stores against the recently not undefeated UConn Huskies. So
Yeah.
Baylor
Crazy game today.
Baylor is going to have to figure it out quick. I would give them a chance in that game. Obviously, road games are tough, but I think they might just match up well with UConn. But we will talk about that later. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this MTE recap from the Baha Mar Hoops Championship. Be sure to check out the other videos on the channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you next time.